It is 9:08, and we are now opening our meeting and calling it to order. Let us start with our roll call. I'm present. Mr. James Bowen.
Present.
Ms. Jenny Hatch is excused. I'll be to vote on that in a minute. Mr. Ron Johnson.
Present.
And Ms. Michelle Russell. Ms. Hatch could not be here today. She had a conflict with the schedule once we rescheduled it. So we need to put in motion so that we can vote to accept her excused absence.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good, thanks. Would you look over your minutes and we so that we can discuss whether there are any errors or whether we have? It's been moved and second that we accept the minutes. Any questions? Ready for a vote? All in favor? Any opposition? Then it passes. This is our time for public comment. Oh, and we have Mr. Kevin Lane. Good morning, Mr. Lane.
Yeah.
Move on.
First of all, I'd like to just say hello to everybody at the board. Good to see you again. Okay. Let's say hello to everyone. Good to see everybody's back safely again. I'd like to just make a suggestion that on public comments are good, but I think that the public comments, after we address some things at the board, then it'll give the people the opportunity to address those issues, maybe perhaps after we do that. So public comments would be nice if we did them after we address some things that we bring out at the board, because people don't know what to comment on until they actually hear some of the things that come out as so-called facts. Okay, so I'm Kevin Lane from OG School of Harrison, licensed barber, instructor, and cosmetologist. I'm coming up on behalf of some students that came to my school that I brought to the attention of the board before in reference to coming from another school and being mistreated. These students are being told that their refund policies are being changed from 40% to 60%. And in some cases, almost max of all their refund money will not be returned to them. We get these people at our school, and we've gotten at least 10 of them right now and got more coming. The thing is that these are things that need to be addressed because these students are being hurt. It's affecting their ability to learn. It's affecting their ability to have upward mobility and to be able to, succeed in the industry. And we got new policies that came out in reference to criminal backgrounds. And so therefore, all we're doing is antagonizing these people, and they're going to get in even more trouble. So I think it's very important that we address this, because if people get frustrated and think nobody's going to help them, then they retaliate and they get in trouble even worse. So I think this is something that definitely needs to be addressed. Also, I would like to think that this is not true, but it was brought to my attention that the person said you can complain all you want, but we have somebody up at TDLR that can help us or informs us of things. So therefore, I bring that to your attention as well. I'm not saying that it's true. I'm just saying it was brought to my attention. And as an instructor, it's my duty to tell you these are some of the things that I'm hearing. I would like to think that that's not happening. So these are some things that I wanted to bring out that have been brought to my attention. And the mistreatment of the students and, holding the monies blocking them from enrolling in the school by putting a code on them so that they can't go to school anywhere else. And then we have to call, make complaints. We've actually sent complaints up to the VA and to TDMR in writing to let them know that this is happening. So therefore, if you check, you'll see with my secretary, and I have sent reports up just to inform people from the logistical side, and also I'm doing it verbally. So I just want to bring that to some people's attention so that we can address these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on, since I see there are students, we really do take great pleasure in having you all come, not only to learn about the process, but it is important that you make this a part of your ritual. Every time the board meets, even after you become licensed, because this is where the decisions are made that affect your day-to-day life and your industry. The decisions are made here, and we need your input, because you're the one who does this job every day. One of my favorite examples to give is years ago when we had a different board, we, at the height of AIDS and hepatitis and all that, we came up with this decision to have barbers wipe down the chairs to disinfect it, and had the air dry for 4 minutes. And even as a kid, I knew that wouldn't work on a Saturday, but we had no input from barbers to say that's not going to work. So decisions are made about your lifeline here. And so it would be great if you could be here and be a part of that discussion. And they post things so that you know what the agenda is going to be before it happens. When we're in legislative processes, you can find the posting on that as well, so that you have a voice. It's important that your voice be heard. Now, with that said, can we have someone who has brought all of these students stand up and tell us what your school is, so we can say welcome to you? Mr. Lane, you're a student? No, I just want you to tell us.
Okay, I'm Kevin Lane from OG School of Hair Design. These are my students from Killeen, Texas. Right next to the foot of the biggest post in the free world, which we always do. But I just want to acknowledge the fact that they came, and they came professionally, like it was asked of them, so they can come on up to the board and be educated from the ground.
Could you all stand, please, so we can see you? Very glad to see you all. You do look very, very nice. Is that the only students?
How you doing? My name is Ledretrick Bennett, campus director of Barbell Barber School and Academy of Hair Design. And I brought one of my senior students here to come check us out and kind of see what goes on in the process. So I'm very thankful to be here and appreciate the input we get.
Okay, let's roll up our sleeves now and begin our journey. All right, staff reports, executive office.
Madam Chair, good morning. Brian Francis, Executive Director of TDLR. Welcome everyone back. Madam Chair, I appreciate you working with us to move the date. You can imagine with Harvey hitting, there was a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people were displaced, and we wanted to honor the fact that we have members on the board from that area, and they need to tend to their families. We need to focus on that. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the information that was just handed out to you. And this is TDLR's response to Hurricane Harvey. It is quite extensive. We started working maybe 2 or 3 days before the hurricane was going to touch. With the numerous programs that we have, we are touched on a lot of different fronts. The first thing we did is we coordinated with the governor's office to ensure that emergency towing trucks and individuals can come in to clear the roads. As Mr. Jemison knows, there were a lot of cars trapped. Some estimates had it as high as $1 million, some as low as 500,000. We were part of that solution. We've had more than 879 out-of-state tow operators come into Texas to help clear those highways. That's just one of the efforts. Then we worked with the governor's office to ensure that we can have additional storage, temporary storage locations. So again, you have the vehicles and you have the vehicle graveyard that you create to the side. But we've removed some of the responsibilities in terms of having to have fencing and the lighting and the signage and having the surface elements in place, because those were no longer necessary. That car doesn't need to be protected because it's unsalvageable. So we were able to make some of those adjustments. across the board, we have about 260,000 plus licensees of TDOR that are in the 60 counties. So that's already hitting our world quite a bit. One of the first things we coordinated with the governor's office is we wanted to make sure that we took the burden of the red tape off those individuals. We contacted them with a proposal to extend expiration dates by 60 days for those folks who would be renewing during that time period. So if you have an August 27th, September 1, a September 30th expiration date, we just simply move that 60 days out. We provided notification to more than 870,000 of our licensees on the listserv notes, but we made it happen just with our computers and getting that done for folks. In terms of late fees and replacement costs, you can imagine if your home is underwater, if your business is underwater, there's a good chance that the license that you have hanging on the wall is underwater as well.
Yeah.
But we want to remove that burden of people having to try to get their license and get a copy of it. Some of our licensees, such as our electricians, our air conditioning contractors, they're required to show their license upon a request by a consumer or law enforcement. But we said we're going to replace those without any cost. So the replacement, the duplicate costs, we were able to take care of that. We're able to extend or waive the late fees for renewal. So if you were able to renew from that area, we waive the late fees for folks in that area as well. We extended the grace period for time of renewals. Then when you think about the hurricane, there's a response, there's a recovery, and there's a rebuild phase. We cover all three of those. In the recovery phase, you want to deal with how do you help people that are immediately affected by this that are at the hospitals. The governor waived the requirement for out-of-state licensing. What that simply means that if you're an out-of-state license in our area, athletic trainer, orthodontist and prosthetist, midwife, speech-language pathologist, imagine the people who were stuck in the hospitals working 12 hours, 14 hours. Well, we had folks from out of state that could come in and help them kind of spell that time period and give them a little break. The governor said if you're licensed properly out of that state, you can contact TWR through our email, Harvey email, and you can be licensed or registered to work in Texas, not have to go through any red tape. We also did similar proposals for air conditioning contractors and electrical contractors. Simply put, there's a group of folks who will follow a storm and try to exploit people in their time of need. So we wanted to put in place a system that allowed us to ensure that the businesses, the people who were making the business arrangements, were still Texas licensees that had the bonding and the insurance elements in place. But what we did is we were able to expedite filling the ranks. What I mean by that is if you have an air conditioning contractor or electrical contractor, we made it very quick and easy for the person with the tool belt on to come in as an apprentice, as a journeyman if they're licensed in certain states, as a master if they're licensed in certain states. We opened the floodgates for those individuals to work through a licensed Texas company. That's been phenomenal. We'll share some stats with you in a minute on that. The other elements that we've worked with is one of our programs are boilers. The boilers underwater. We provided information to the boiler operators, whether you're in a laundromat, whether you're in a school, of how to safely bring that boiler back on, so that that's available. We did the same thing with one of our programs, water well drillers. We all provided information to allow that homeowner to be able to properly disinfect that water, their water supply, so they can bring that back on board. On November, we'll be taking over the program called mold remediation, which is going to be extremely busy in this process as well. So we were able to coordinate with the Department of State Health Services, which currently has a program, and jointly work together in making sure that individuals who are coming from out of state properly trained, properly qualified, and can continue to work through a licensed company in Texas. So that's something that we'll take on board when we get to that point. We've been working with, I just want to praise Ray and his staff. They've been working directly with the schools that are impacted in the area, asking them how many students do you have, are they displaced, how is your school's conditioning, do you have to shut it down, are you going to bring them back on board? There have been a number of schools that have stood ready to take on students that they needed to do. We've coordinated to parallel our efforts with the Texas Education Agency to see how they're handling absences and how they're handling tardies and those sort of things, so that we are consistent in providing a response to those that are in need in that area. Couple more things I want to talk about is our outreach, and then I'll go into some statistics real quick. Outreach is the most important thing, because if people don't know about it, they can't even begin to help themselves and point to where they need help. We've reached out to our legislative contacts. There's 66 House members, 19 Senate members that are in those districts, and 60 counties that are affected. We provide them with all the information so that their district offices on the ground can point their constituents to where they need to go. We've sent out the listserv message to our folks. On the front end, we have contacted national associations, whether it be with the podiatrist group that we took over in September, or just dealing with the National Speech Language Pathology group. We've reached out to them to say, hey, if you got out-of-state folks that need to come in, here's their path by which they can come into Texas. We've created Vietnamese and Spanish language videos on our webpage so that we can reach that constituency. We also have the language line available in our contact center, so we're able to pivot and have the contact with everyone at the point where they are. And then finally, we had two of our guys in our electrical section, Jerry Daniels and Larry Rifle. They're fantastic. Within 3 days, they were already in Port Aransas, physically walking around and doing assessments of structures to see if they were in a position to have the electricity fired back up or not. And it's just part of their heart of service that they have in that area. So it's pretty impressive stuff. Madam Chair, I want to turn to page, as the old man takes off his glasses, I want to turn to page 6. Just highlight a few of the statistics. So in that first box, you see where we have the emergency consent tow licenses. That's the 879 I was referring to earlier that came to Texas. Within 2 weeks, they'd already moved 300,000 vehicles. We talked to the folks with DMV yesterday. They've issued 300,000 salvage titles last week, and that number's only going to increase. The company licenses coming in, we had 37. Tow trucks, 127. Those tow trucks were working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, just moving back and forth. And what they do primarily is what we refer to as the secondary tow. So the vehicle is towed to the vehicle storage facility, and from there, it's towed to the salvage yard. They were doing the salvage, BSF and salvage yard, just moving those out the way and getting them out quickly. CE, hours waived was for 590 folks. Late fees waived, that's 2,004. Replacement fees waived, that's 358. You can multiply that times 25 and tell you how much money saved. The expiration dates extended, automatically was 23,912. Those people don't have to worry about it. And I love that part of what we've been able to respond to. The customer service contacts, and we skip down to that. We've received 11,030 calls specifically to Harvard, not to the regular business from the folks in Amarillo and the people in Lubbock that are calling in and saying, where's my license? How do I sign up? TLR is so nice, TLR is so mean, whatever they're saying. This is 11,000 specifically to Harvey. My license has been washed away. My mother was a cosmetologist in Houston. My dad has an electrical company specifically to that. 459 emails, and then Facebook inquiries coming in. The outreach has been phenomenal. The Facebook post, when we say 8 posts, imagine that each post is, you now have your license extended, you now have your late fees waived. That's one post with all that data in there. We've had 14,768 people look at those views. Tweets, the same thing, sending our message out to those folks, 3,199 views on that. Email updates, that's the listserv with over 871,000 people that we've delivered to. And then I just want to give you a little data on the licensed population that's specific to barbers in that area. On the next page, page 7, there were 8,400, or are 8,417 barbers in that area, whether it's school, student, shop, licensee, 8,417. They are already included, not all of those, but those that would be renewing this time period that already have that extension. Those that choose to renew during this time period will have the CU requirements waived. Thank goodness you guys don't have it, right? Y'all get scared. They're like, man, I know it's CE. So it's been a phenomenal effort. We meet every other day with our disaster response team. This will be with us for the next 9 months as we continue to get into that rebuild stage. One of the things that TLR was able to do in the last week is to get a seat at the table. So the governor has a rebuild commission. Nick was working some of his magical fairy dust, which does not work for the UT football team. But, so Nick was able to work some of his magic and make sure that TLR is represented and that we are a part of the rebuild effort, because it's been phenomenal. This agency, with our broad responsibility of 32 programs today, 38 on November 1, we're knee deep in it. But it's a good thing. We're knee deep in helping our fellow Texans on this process. We've learned so much. I'm proud of our staff, the heart that they've exhibited. Tanya's group, the field operators or investigators, inspectors, excuse me, they have been phenomenal in this. They've been physically impacted, our employees in that area, and still providing service. Losing homes, but being engaged, and we've become closer as an agency during this crisis. And I think that's what happens across Texas. You've seen people draw closer, forgetting all the crazy little stuff that tends to divide us. We've been focusing on Harvey. And Harvey, Harvey may hit us, but Harvey did not win. And Harvey won't win. So Madam Chair, that's the presentation on the elements. Taylor sent me a note. I need to sit to the I believe that's all I have. We're going to take care of the bill implementation during the rule presentation. That is the culmination of our bill efforts in the Q&A session. But I'm able to answer any questions you may have.
First, I wanted to say to you that you all have done a tremendous job. When you look at the figures, it's just overwhelming. I always knew that the staff was pretty sharp and that you all handled the quantity of just the regular work with all the different entities, and anybody who answers the phone has the right answer for all of the agencies that you oversee. But to see the sacrifice and the hours that this must have required, the ingenuity to come up with a master plan in the midst of it all, to already have thought down the road, because when you're in a disaster like that, I lived in Houston and went through a flood that came up to me here when I was crazy enough to think I could walk to the car.
Madam Chair, but you're not that tall, so I don't
Exactly, that's true. That is exactly true. But to be able to, in a crisis, think that clearly and further down the road and to make it easier for the licensees and make a path for them. And then to go beyond the call of duty to be able to create a reach out, an outreach program for them across all platforms was really, really tremendous, and we commend you all on that. It makes a difference. I had relatives who were going through that, and it really makes a difference because they have so much coming at them at one time.
Our next phase, Madam Chair and board members, is that we're creating an embedded disaster response team. And so we're gonna have a physical presence in Houston, just saying we're at this location, and we'll have at least 2 other teams going to the other 59 counties each day, just visiting them and saying, we're here. Do you have an air conditioning license, electrical license, a barber license? What do you need from the agency? What resources do you need? So we'll be traveling around, probably kicking that off next week.
So you're just gonna go around and visit to figure out?
Let them know, and we'll put it on our webpage announcing which city we'll be in, what locations, so that people can come out that need help.
So you'll have a site and then they will come to
Absolutely.
you. That is tremendous. Ms. Weiser, you had a comment?
It was a question on the expiration dates that were extended. Was there a time frame given on this?
It just simply, so their expiration date was August 30th, we moved it to October 30th. We just split it 60 days.
60 days, that's okay.
I'm getting close to Taylor's head when I split. We just split it. 9 days. Woo! And had to call HR on it.
Yes, thank you, Ron Johnson Jr. I was just curious to know, we put out we were very fortunate that our school was like about 2 blocks away from where they released the waters on that reservoir, so we were safe. But there was a couple of schools that were about less than a mile away from me that got damaged totally. And we put out a flyer and a message to, and also reached out to the schools, but I didn't get any answers yet. But I was curious to know, how do you make yourself available? Because we have over 10,000 square feet of space, to help out those students that were that were not able to go to school the next day or whatever the case may be. You know, I heard you say Ray, you know, and their team put that together. So I was very curious of how to lend a helping hand there, because we do have either we can squeeze some room, or we did want to make ourselves available for those students that, because we knew. I drove down the road and I saw it. I saw that they didn't have school. So I was blessed, we were fortunate that, you know, like I said, the water stopped right before our block. And so they were using our parking lot for like FEMA and things of that nature. So we did about 350 free haircuts at the George R. Brown, probably like the weekend before Labor Day. And so we've been very active and proactive in going out and trying to make people feel normal about, you know, give them some normalcy about what's happening, because I can only imagine being in a shelter for over a day or two, driving crazy, you know, or being there and losing everything. So I was very, you know, when you mentioned that stat and that procedure that y'all were working on, which I think is awesome, because that was some of the things that we would think about right away. If it was our students, where would they go? You know, fortunately, we have 2 schools, so I might, you know, one of them wasn't affected, I would send them to that location. But let's say if we only had one, you know, where would they go to continue? Because as you know, 18-year-old, you know, if they take too much of a break, that thought process might go to
full-time break.
They might change their mind and put it on the back burner for another year.
Just a couple of things. This is very similar to when a school closes down
Yes, sir.
for some unknown reason, whether it's financial, whatever the case is. And what we've been able to do in those scenarios, and specifically in this scenario, is we have a process set up that, number one, we're not going to harm that student, which means that we're going to immediately acknowledge and give them credit for the hours they have. They don't have to fumble, they don't have to try to figure out what their hours are, so our system's going to give them that type of situation. We've also coordinated with other schools, because that's where the heart of the matter is, in expediting the transfer of those students, and part of it boils down to the hours. Mr. Lane touched on the good side of being able to take students from other schools, but he also shows the dark side,
Right.
that sometimes schools hold on to those hours.
Exactly.
And that's something we'll have to work through, and I look forward to sitting down with him after this meeting to get some specifics on that with our enforcement division. So it's a matter of me pointing at you and pointing you to Rebecca now, and that's the connection. If you want to be available, we're going to get you connected with Rebecca and make sure that your school is acknowledged as a place that students can transfer to.
Right.
We'll make that happen, but it's really at the student level
Yes.
that you want to really execute.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
That is good. As long as I've been with you guys, I still continue to be amazed at your capabilities. Compliance division report?
Working with new glasses here, so. Good morning, Madam Chair, advisory board members. My name is Marina LaFleur, and I'll be giving the Compliance Division report today. Compliance has participated in PSI examination reviews. Elizabeth Perez, David Gonzalez, and myself have all contributed with these exams, and they've all been held here in Austin, June and July of this year. Compliance has also attended the TIVA conference. We did this in July 17th through the 20th in Irving. Elizabeth, David Gonzalez, Enforcement, Education, Examinations, Field Operations, and myself have all contributed at some point on public outreach at these shows. Here we answer any industry-related questions, provide any information on license renewal or any other assistance that's asked of us. And we also use Facebook and Twitter to let the licensees know that we are there and we can assist them with any questions that they might have. Elizabeth and myself are also leading the bar and cause implementation team on the new law changes for the 85th legislative session as well. We have a couple of trade shows that are coming on. We have one of the biggest shows, which is going to be in San Antonio. It'll be the Armstrong McCall show. We'll probably have about 10,000 licensees that will attend that show, so we'll be able to assist them with any questions that they might have. We're also attending the 73rd State Texas Association and Viticulture Show, which is going to be held in Beaumont this year. Elizabeth and I continue to insist field operations,
Excuse me, ma'am.
customer service.
When is that? The beauty contest?
The beauty culture show will be October 8th and 9th.
Okay, and it's still gonna go on, it's still.
It is still going on. It's one of the longest holding shows in the state.
That's the one in Beaumont.
It's the one in Beaumont, yes, ma'am. It'll be October 8th and 9th in Beaumont. So we did confirm they still are going to have that show. We knew that they had quite a bit of damage, so we did confirm, and they are going through with it as well. Elizabeth and I continue to insist enforcement, field operations, staff, and customer service with any questions during investigations, inspections, as well addressing any daily issues and concerns that may come up. That concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer anything that you may have.
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you, Des.
Education and Examination Division. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Advisory Board members. My name is Rebecca. I'm a son of TLR's Education Examination. I just want to start by commending Mr. Jemison for, I actually had a conversation with him over the phone, and I really enjoyed you saying, it touched my heart when you said, we just wanted them to feel more. Because we, as the state of Texas, it doesn't just hit, the coast, it affected everyone. We all knew someone, that was affected by this horrible, horrible storm. So I just want to, commend your school, and we will work on getting the information to the other schools that are willing to help us out. So thank you very much. Chairman Connor, I have not forgotten about you. We're waiting until the weather gets a little better for us to make our trip down to the valley, but I still have you in thought that we will be going to that harbor school soon. I would say maybe midwinter, just to give us a little break from the heat. I do have a few statistics for everybody on the Harvey status. We've received about 128 combined emails from both industries in regards to, questions on status of their licenses as far as schools or, their hours from concerned students. We've given, authorizations for them to move to temporary locations. We've got 3 schools on the cosmetology side that have decided to do that. We've got 3 schools that have closed completely because of damage. We did send out some emails just to kind of get a response. We understand it's not high on their priority, but just if anybody out there can, pass the word on that, please respond to us so that we know if you need us. We've sent out to just check on the schools to make sure, are you open? What do you need from us? How can we help you? So we just want to make sure we get a little more response from everyone. So if you've got that email, please respond back to us, and we'll do what we can to help you out. That's pretty much all I have. We have the standard statistics for you at the back of your report there. If you have any questions for me.
Are we still looking good?
Yeah, not bad. We're getting there.
Not bad.
We're getting there, and our exam review committee continues to work diligently to make sure that these exams are fair, and they are making sure that they're assessing the health and safety for the state of Texas.
I think we know that there were some questions that came up at our last meeting about the process. Did we get a chance to deal with that?
I believe we have that as an agenda item, and I'll be back up here to review that with you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Enforcement Division.
Madam Chair, Advisory Board members, this is Chris Funderburg, prosecutor with the Enforcement Division. You may remember at our last meeting, I tried to explain everything that enforcement does in about 5 minutes, and it ended up sounding like an auctioneer in the process. This time it'll be different, that we know around the world with enforcement. Instead, just a little stroll down enforcement lane, few statistics, few cases, sprinkling commentary, it'll be over before you know it. So,
You can always enjoy that.
I appreciate it. If we look at the first statistics at the bottom, my page 3, I think at the bottom of your page 2, you find separate categories of information about enforcement activities from August 2016 through July 2017. The right-hand column is just the barbering program, the left-hand column is all of TDR programs combined. As you know, the barbering program recently passed a major milestone, 16,000 licensed barbers in the state of Texas, and that number continues to grow. That said, barbering is one of our smaller programs, and the statistics reflect that. Approximately less than 10% of all of the cases opened during the period were for barbering, and they represent about 6% of all of the cases resolved during that period. The remainder of the cases, the remainder of the report is several summaries of cases that have been resolved since our last board meeting. They include several variety of types of allegations. They reflect enforcement's continued focus on stamping out both unlicensed activity as well as threats to the health and safety of Texas citizens, and also to ensuring the financial security of students of the barbering schools. Primarily, these cases help to illustrate that my main and only point that I want to make is that the primary function of enforcement is not punishment. Rather, enforcement actions are tools that we use to help ensure respondents return to compliance and to the straight and narrow path. In the vast majority of cases, we prefer to offer a reduced penalty in exchange for the guarantee of remedial action and also and future adherence to laws and rules, and I hope that priority is reflected in these case summaries. The idea of punishment as a kind of a last resort is also evident in how enforcement is dealing with cases originating from counties that have been hit by Hurricane Harvey, or simply goes out to everyone involved directly and indirectly, which is why we have put a temporary hold on all actions in all of these affected areas. We'll continue to work with individuals in the months to come and encourage any questions to call our division. With that, I'll conclude my report. Before I do, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Chris, before you leave.
Yes.
Could you do the first case that's highlighted, because it's something that Mr. Lane brought up earlier.
Oh, sure.
And it's a refund case, and I'd
Yes.
like for you to walk through that a little bit, but also the conclusion of it, specifically for refunds being paid.
Yes, so there are two cases involved in this. There were two cases that were resolved in this agreed order, both of them involving a tuition refund calculation, which is the technical methodology. And I'd be happy to bore you with it, but probably it's for the best if I stay out of the guts of it. But essentially, there is a continuing issue between that is being resolved at appellate level in a case that's currently that has a ruling on it by the Third Court of Appeals. I think came down last month, but it is almost certainly going to be appealed to this Texas Supreme Court as well. So, but in this particular issue, in this particular series of cases, the Texas Barber College agreed with our methodology and concluded that the tuition refund that they initially calculated was incorrect, and agreed with our method of calculation and refunded the students the difference, and as well as paid a penalty to resolve the actual violation, which was the miscalculation. Is that what you're referring to?
That's a great softball pitch for me to jump in. Actually, more of a T-ball throw for me, but I appreciate it. So, Madam Chair and board members, as you're aware, the calculation for a refund is set by rule and statute. So each school doesn't get to deviate and say, today I want to do X and tomorrow I'm going to do Y. And so we have the ability to look at these cases, and we're going to have already asked Charlotte and Chris to give me the list of cases that have come forward. Brad, I'm not going to get involved in them at this level. I'm just going to generally understand them. In my new law, I got to remember there's some things I can't do and some things I can do. But nonetheless, the refund cases become pretty easy, straightforward. It's a formula. And so we're going to go and take a look at the situations that Mr. Lane has brought to our attention. And that formula is going to dictate whether they're owed money or not. It's not going to be subjective. It's very quantitative process. So we'll look into that. But I wanted the board and the folks in attendance to understand that we will investigate and we will enforce cases on refund issues. We're not shy on that at all. And we'll make sure that the money gets back to the students if it's owed to them. So be assured that we're going to run forward with this. Okay.
And I apologize. I didn't want to misstate. The case that's currently being appealed is actually a tuition refund issue. Well, to appeal from a SOA case where the allegation is from a cosmetology school and not a barbering school. However, the same essential problem exists in the barbering school, with barber colleges and with cosmetology students. So I think, and I don't want to speak outside of my pay grade, but I think how the court ultimately determines the interpretation of the cosmetology school will impact how we determine how to proceed with barbering schools as well. Yeah.
Oh, just since we're seeing this now, on these next two, can you just give us the highlights? I've always
Sure.
enjoyed you being able to explain
Oh.
to us the successes we're having.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Actually, the second of the two, excuse me, so case number 14814. This is, I included this because it's essentially a representation of unlicensed activity and failure to cooperate, which are allegations that we'll always pursue. Like, it is a very rare instance where we have a case that has an unlicensed activity and certainly a failure to cooperate that we don't pursue to a penalty. But as you can see, even though these are serious allegations, we're always willing to forego punishment in lieu of continued compliance, even with unlicensed individuals, even with owners of salons, or excuse me, of barbershops who are unwilling to participate with our inspectors during the inspection. We'll still try to work with you after the fact. A good way, though, to get your card pulled is the last of these cases, 19398. In this case, the respondent told us he was going to do something, didn't, even though Brian signed off on it. We just can't let that go. And so but even in this case, we probably would have come back around and said,
I was like, you made me sound gangster. You know, like, I got people. He was like, we can't let that happen.
We're probably listening to this at times, but so even in that case, we would have probably been willing to come to an agreed settlement, and that would allow this respondent to continue, receiving the benefits of licensure. But if they don't respond, we will revoke licenses, and that's ultimately what happened in this case. He won't even be getting a shampoo license, even if we still issued that license. So, did you have further questions about these cases?
No, I think it's helpful for us and for the public to hear what you're doing, because a lot of times we hear reports when things aren't being done well. And so it gives people an opportunity, particularly since we're broadcast, to understand that you're serious about what you are about and what those liabilities are. Because I think that sometimes we see that it gets, the perception in the community is that it gets very relaxed and they don't have to worry about it. And I think that it's good that you're saying that you're not trying to be too harsh, you're not trying to punish, but we have to be reasonable, because our responsibility, as we were told on our first orientation, is to protect the citizens of Texas. So it helps when we get a chance to hear a few things that you're doing, and I appreciate it. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving at a really good clip. Okay, so now we're coming down to field operations.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Tanya Guthrow. I'm the Director of Field Operations. In our report, we start out with the most common violations. You guys may have seen these. We do these once a quarter. So for your next meeting, we're going to have some updated information. For our division projects, Jennifer Harless is our South Region Manager, but she's been doing a lot of work and research on the prevention of human trafficking. And this is helpful for our inspectors who may be out in the field and see something that is suspect, and it's providing training and the information to help us help people who may be in need if we're out there and we see something. She's also doing a lot of work that's going to benefit the whole agency. Mini salon roundups. The field staff in the entire division have completed 58 mini salon roundups as the date of this report was submitted throughout Texas, completing 2,384 inspections. I want to mention, though, that the majority of these are for the cosmetology program, because in these mini salons, you'll see cosmetology salons, barber shops, but you may also see dual salons. So, but that is the total number for the entire effort in the mini salon roundups. Also, I've got here that Cam Tran, our East Region manager, she does a lot of work reaching out to the Vietnamese TV in Houston, and has also reached out to other TV stations, throughout the state. Most recently, she's worked with Susan Stanford from our communications, strategic communications division, to get on the air this last week to talk about updates and ways to help the the licensees in Houston, so that the Vietnamese community will have the information, as well as the English-speaking community. Also, I want to mention that Ulysses Osio was able to get on Telemino and do a report this last Friday as well to help our Spanish-speaking licensees. And for our personnel update, we were able to hire 4 new inspectors. They're located throughout the state. 2 of them will be in Houston. And right now, though, I want to point out that our Houston staff, our East Region staff, are not performing inspections. We have them doing other administrative work. It's not the time right now for us to be out there on the road for their safety, and also, the licensees are busy, rebuilding and starting to get back on their feet. And I would like to commend the East Region staff for taking care of each other and doing everything they can to help licensees while they go through this tragedy, with their fellow Houstonians and folks from Beaumont and that whole area of the state. And the last item we have are our inspections. We did good this year. We are making progress, and I hope to see that continue into the next fiscal year. Cindy, any questions?
Well, first of all, thank you for considering the special needs of Houston. It seems like the entire department has really taken that into account, and the sensitivity about the inspections in particular. Any questions from the board or comments?
All right, thank you.
Licensing division?
I'm not going to sit with that next time, that was long. Lauren took the license, and Barbara Board, advisory members, and Joyce Hamilton, licensing manager for the Barbering program. Since we last met, I've been attending a lot of meetings on the barber rules, human trafficking, and on new programs that my team will be getting. I'll be getting laser hair and massage therapy. So some of my team members and I have been training at the Department of State Health Services. These programs will be coming over November 1st. Earlier today, Brian had given me some statistics for the people that we're helping due to Hurricane Harvey. So I just want to give you some statistics, just a couple related specifically to barbers. The total numbers of renewals so far have been, we've laid the wait fee for barbers so far, as of Friday, with 20. We replaced 13 licenses, and we've extended the renewals an additional 60 days to 570 people. But I'm sure as people settle in, these numbers probably will increase. That concludes my report.
Appreciate it. Questions or comments from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
It has only been an hour and we have covered so much, and that has been tremendous, but now we're coming down to the legislative session. So, if everybody feels good, do we still want to keep rolling? Okay. Somebody said yes. Okay. the discussion of the 85th legislative session bills. Our work group. So we hope you all enjoy the sonic transportation. I think it's going to, we're switching to training now.
Good morning, board members. Pauline Tran, Assistant General Counsel for the Barber Program. So today, first we're going to go through the changes that were required after the legislative changes during the 85th session. I want to give a shout out to my PIT team, my bill implementation team as well. We did a lot of work. It was very quick, just a few months of going through all of the rules and trying to decipher the legislative changes, which was difficult because we have to incorporate the changes from the law, and there's no official printing of the new law because legislative council, the official enrolling clerk, they take their time. So we had to go through the bills and really kind of make decisions and determinations on what these bills meant and how the law is going to look. So we're going to start with some changes, and I am in your bill packet for Chapter 82, and I'm going to run through the sections, the change, the reasoning for the change, if it was a bill or if there was some other reason, some typos and misreferences that I just corrected as I went. So y'all stop me if y'all have questions, and just a reminder, this is for publishing, it's for public comment. So it's our first step to properly implementing the bills that were passed during the 85th session out there for comment and seeing if we're in the right direction. You will see these rules again before they go to the commission for final adoption. Ready?
Yes.
So the first change is to 8210, to number 5, barber technician. So I was moved and it basically shifted. I was shampoo, which was removed per Senate Bill 1503. So it was just a technical change to update that language. 8220, I was being picky, and the statute is specialty license, so I added the word specialty in there. There's no real impact.
Excuse me, just so that everybody's able to follow, do you want to explain your editing marks, like underscore means?
Oh, yeah,
added and
so
all that?
anything that is struck through and in a bracket has been removed, and everything that is underlined is new.
Has been added?
Has been added, yes, it's new language. And then anything that is just plain text is what is current.
Thank you.
And then 8221, we've changed it to a may. So having the requirement that you must bring a model is a little bit prohibitive because now a lot of the exam is, from my understanding and sitting through the examination review, is that they do a lot of these on mannequins, and having a model could impact your ability to actually take the exam if your model doesn't show up, if your model has the wrong ID, and you've already paid, you lose out. So giving them the option to, if you want to bring a model, you can, or if you want to use a mannequin, you can. So just giving them that option as a student when they take those exams.
Colleen, would you share with them the data you have regarding the number of folks who did not bring a model?
That data's over here.
That's okay, go away.
It's not with me. I apologize.
That's all right, that's all right.
Oh, I'm really upset with myself that I did it. Rebecca, do you have that off the top of your head?
It was over. Let me know if you have it.
I was trying to consolidate all of my info, and I consolidated it out.
Colleen, the ballpark is fine.
I do. Mr. Cummings.
Come on up to the table.
Oh, man. It's okay. All right, we got you back.
Your perfectionist, lady, yes, this is major crisis. Not to anybody else, but to the two of us. I know, I understand.
I thought it was pretty compelling when they shared it with us.
Hello again, Madam Chair, Rebecca, West Education Exam. It's roughly between $9,000 and $10,000 lost per year that is lost because their model didn't, they had someone lined up and their model overslept or their model didn't show up or they didn't have the proper ID. So we wanted to eliminate those barriers by telling them it can be done on a mannequin. Why not? You know, this is a assessment of health and safety. It's not a technique exam. So by doing it on, by giving them that option where they perform it on a mannequin is going to save them money and get them licensed. So we're not prohibiting them, well, you have to have this model here. They're allowing them, just come on and take an exam.
One question I would have is, so are they then told to also travel with a mannequin, or you happen to have one at the testing site, or what?
The kits, some of these schools do provide kits when they do test. So what we would do is just make sure that that would be on the list. We print out a candidate information bulletin, and in that candidate information bulletin, we're going to tell them what they need to bring in for the examination. I know that there's been questions on, can everything that's on this exam be done on a mannequin? We've had our subject matter experts, we've gone through an entire practical examination on nothing but a mannequin, and our subject matter experts, concur that it could be done.
My question was, so if I thought I had a model coming and they promised me over chocolate that they would be there.
Sure.
And then I don't know that they're not gonna be there until I get there. So your list of what they should bring will include saying you need to bring something just in case?
What we would like to do, in order to prevent a logistical nightmare for PSI, is with that may in there, have our subject matter experts determine whether it's mannequin or model, not one or the, you couldn't bring one or the other. So if they've made the decision as subject matter experts, after reviewing this examination process on nothing but a mannequin, then that's what we'll use, just to kind of make sure that we don't have some type of logistical nightmare and it could be disruptive. Because in the examination process, the models are only used for a portion of that examination and they have to be excused. Whereas if we just had nothing but mannequins and a mannequin stand, the flow would be a lot easier and it wouldn't take as much time.
So let me see if I'm understanding this, because I thought you were saying that, so if the model didn't show up, they would have a fallback. But what you're suggesting then is that this language is going to determine going forward whether, so it's not you can bring a mannequin or a model, or if your model doesn't show up, you have a fallback. You're saying let's replace the concept of the model and just use a mannequin is what you're looking at proposing now?
It's what our subject matter experts are looking at now.
Yes. Okay.
But the language that we're proposing in the rule is either or.
It's either or, yeah, it's either or. So I mean, they're entertaining all options. It's not, it's just the thing is they're trying to eliminate the barrier of having.
I get the point of what you're trying to eliminate. What I'm trying to get clear about is, since you said that sometimes the models don't show, and I'm familiar with that, or you're sweating bullets because they're not there yet.
So will there be a mannequin that provides it?
What I'm trying to figure out is, also, are we saying that when the proposed language will give them the option of having one or the other? From what you just told me, it sounds like no. What we're looking at is making it a decision whether it's going to be a mannequin always or it's going to be the models always. The original way, the way you read it to me sounded like you're taking out the shells. Maybe tells me that if my model doesn't show, I have a fallback plan. But that's what I'm asking for clarification on. Are we trying to suggest that they will have the option? Because obviously, if you've gone to the trouble to give this person the money to pay for a hotel or whatever and be there, and they don't show, that is a problem. So my question was, are you saying to them, you should have come with this mannequin just in case your person doesn't show, or are we making it ironclad from now on it's going to be a mannequin?
We would have to go back to our subject matter experts with the language that is now being introduced. Because I think what they were doing before this language was introduced was just going one or the other. With that made, we would have to go in and have it clear cut. If we would be on a list. What we do in that CID is we give them a list of things that are, what they need to bring with them for that examination, and we would definitely have that on there permanently.
Rebecca, let me ask you a question too. Is it part of the test? Are they required to bring a mannequin head anyway for the last part for relaxers? So they already have the mannequin
Yes.
head with there?
Yes.
Was that?
So, no, my question was when you say may, for me, from a grammatical standpoint, that tells me that I have an option, because may implies the
Madam
option.
Chair,
What I'm trying to get clear.
let me make it eminently clear.
Okay.
Right now, if the board and the commission does nothing to this rule, you shall have a human model.
You got the shell.
If this is passed and goes through the board when it comes back, and the commission agrees with it May, you can have a physical human model, or you can have a mannequin.
That's what I want.
That's the decision that rests with this group here. What you guys choose to put in there. The subject matter experts are fantastic in telling us what they want, what their desires are. But at the end of the day, this language, if it says may, it is either or. Even if my grandma thinks it should be shall, it's either or.
Because it seems like the recommendation was made, which I don't have an objection to. I just wanted to understand what the may, because that implies that there is an option, and I just want to know what the options are. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Rebecca, one other thing. If they are doing a shave on a mannequin, are there accommodations that they need to follow? Because normally the mannequin is on a desk and not on a chair for draping purposes.
They would do, they would put it on a stand, and if I'm, actually, let me bring my subject matter expert up. And then would you come up here and kind of?
Absolutely.
That's a bit accurate.
Yeah, I went over.
I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Thomas, and I'm the Cosmetology Client Service Manager for PSI. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Your questions that you're asking about the mannequin and how it would be draped, if we have to come to a decision that we are no longer doing, we are assessing safety, not the skill of what they're doing. There is some of that in there, skill is in there evidently. But for the most part, our job is to ensure that we have safe barbers, licensed barbers out there working. And so to do the mannequin, and as you described, the draping of that mannequin, because it's a mannequin, we understand that there are no shoulders. So there isn't anything that's going to help hold that up. So we encourage that they use the counter or the workstation to represent the shoulders. So if they're putting a cape down and it is draped the way that they would if it was a real person laying back, then that's helpful. We allow a tripod, which a tripod then would allow them to push that mannequin head forward and be able to do those shaving strokes in the areas that are appropriate by using that. The whole idea of going to mannequin was so that we could relieve that burden that we have seen happen as the candidates are disappointed because their model didn't show up or it wasn't an ID. So this was a solution that we felt would be good for that candidate. And we can still assess whether somebody is in a proper and appropriate area, if they're holding the razor in an appropriate way, if the stroke is done appropriately. We can see all those safety things that we need to be looking at to make sure. We don't need that real person to know that if they're not using the lead point of the razor and they're beginning with the belly of the razor, that's going to create a problem if that was somebody's real face. So those are the kind of things that we train our raters to be looking at using the mannequin head.
I just wasn't sure if they were going to make some sort of accommodation to the chair, so the mannequin head can be slipped into where the headrest would really be, so they could do proper draping techniques and lay them back and show you that way.
And it is something that would definitely be acceptable. There are stands out there that do fit on the back of the chair, so they're welcome to use whichever type of stand works best for them. We're all about licensing. We're all about getting them out there. So we are going to hold them accountable only as a yes or no. Did they provide proper draping? Yes, they did. If it fell to the floor and they left it there, then no, they didn't ensure the draping was maintained. So it's very basic. It's very black and white, either yes or no. And it's minimal competency. So that means that person is day one, out of school, ready to be minimally competent to perform in those manners.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Not at you, dear. It's just that when we began this journey, one of the reasons we wanted to Sunset Commission, put under TVLR, was to hold a higher standard. And so when I see us going to minimal, because as a shop owner, when you are trying to hire someone and you see that the person is certified by the state, you don't only assume that they have safety knowledge, you assume that they have skill knowledge too. That's what the test was about. And so when I hear that we're not testing for that, that really concerns me. Because we were supposed to be taking us to a higher standard.
Perhaps something for your education and examination worker to discuss.
Because I visited a couple of the barber schools to actually have my hair done, and I have listened to instructors say to them, here's what's not happening. Because I'm short, so I'm a challenge to anyone that is trying to deal with me. And it was interesting that I learned stuff just sitting in the chair with the instructor saying to them that here's how you need to make an adjustment in draping this person, and here's why you do this. And anyway, and I find that sort of in line with what Ms. Lasser was saying. I find it difficult to visualize that using the tabletop as the shows, because the person was trying to help them understand, and particularly in shampooing somebody even, when you're draping them, how do you do that in a way not to get water down their back and so forth. So it's just disheartening to me, but moving ahead.
Well, how would they demonstrate a blood spill on a mannequin for that too?
And so we do not have to move ahead. This is a decision point, a starting point for the advisory board. I can suggest to my wife that we should go to the sports bar tonight for dinner, but she's gonna make the decision on where we're gonna eat. This is a suggestion that has come to you, and even if it may not be the suggestion you think is appropriate, it's merely a suggestion. And so this advisory board, in your role, in your capacity, taking the information from the subject matter expert, taking the information from the staff, taking the information from Mr. Lane's body language, whatever it is, whatever it is, whatever it is, you get to factor that in, and so I don't want you to feel like, oh, moving on. So each section, you can decide to take a look at the end of all this and say, we want to publish, but change that back to shall. You can say, we want to publish, and we'll keep it at may, but we may change it back to shall later on. It's your call, so I don't want you to feel bullied, bluffed, or buffaloed in this moment, okay?
I really appreciate that, because you're hearing our concerns, and so if we
I'm
need to
seeing
yeah. So if we need to then give the suggestions at this point of what we think it needs to be, then we need to do that so that we can do those recommendations. Because Ms. Weiser, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're talking? I've explained to you what my concerns are. So whatever notes you need to take to address that for your draft, I would appreciate it. Would you go ahead and explain to us your concerns about the board skill?
So during the barber examination, the practical examination, one of the things that they come in and test on is shape. And a proctor or rater at that time comes up and tests the face for stubble. And something else they're supposed to perform during that testing is a blood spill. Mm-hmm. You cannot, and if you were talking about health and safety causes for, or reasoning for our public to be aware of, and for our barbers to know how to deal with these properly and dispose of blood spills and razors that have been contaminated, that is absolutely something they can't perform on a mannequin. I mean, you can do a mock one, but which is what they do, but it's still something that's really important for them to be able to keep from
I'm going
contaminating.
to express my ignorance here. We don't actually cut people, right? I mean,
No, we
Right. So regardless of whether or not somebody is hurt, you do have to go through the motions. So it's the same motion. So my understanding would be that you would go through those same motions on a mannequin as you would on a person. Now, again, I don't go one way or the other. I don't have a thought. I don't practice this, so I don't know. If you're uncomfortable with the language, then it will say as a shall, and students who test for barber must have a model. And that's the world that we live in now, and that's the world that we will continue to live in. This would just be,
Let's ask then, because if you have some concerns, particularly since part of our, and I know that we've discovered some cures for some things we were worried about a few years ago, but goodness only knows what's coming up next in terms of having the instruments and dealing with the blood. That's a major thing for barbers to know. I would like to have input from each of you. I will start off by saying I think you really need to have a person. And it is unfortunate if your person doesn't show, but you need to know that when you're making that selection, that you put them in the car with you. This is serious business. And we worked, the generations before us worked a long time to make this a profession and not just, a trade. So we want to keep that. But now let's go down the road with everybody if we can. Do you have any comments that you want to add to this? Because we're going to look at helping them figure out what this language needs to be. And this will be setting the standard for a long time, for another legislative session.
Okay, well, I've been licensed in Ohio, Michigan, and now Texas. And when I went to barber school in Ohio, that was a requirement that we had to have a model. We also had things we did on a mannequin, but the model had to be there, so I think the issue is there.
I'm saying the wording should remain as shall.
Ron Johnson Jr. I feel that if someone is very serious about their career and they want to become a barber or a cosmetologist, bringing a model is not a problem. It kind of shows me that their determination if they want to actually be in this career or not. If a person can't bring a model to the exam, then they don't need to be a barber. As far as I'm, in my
Mr. Jemison, that's not one of the questions on the examination. You are this whole thing is out.
Man. I'm good with it. But as the answer to my application is, I think we should leave it. You good at Yes, good.
82.22, I just noted here that speaking specifically about specialty shops in the statute, it references one of the two statutory references for specialty shops. So I just added the second one that also speaks to specialty shop. So just a clerical change up. 82.23. Now this was my biggest change, and I'd really like you guys to take a look. I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Connor on this language. So during this past legislative session, House Bill 2739 and Senate Bill 2065 made changes to the exact same section about barber schools. One of them left square footage in chairs and added the smaller specialty schools. One of them removes the chairs, sinks, square footage requirement, and did some language about health and safety. 2065 was that second bill that removed the square footage chairs and sinks. And 2065 also contains language that says if there is a conflict between any other change in law, that language would control. So, that being said, everything that had to do with square footage, chairs, sinks, workstations, had to come out. And I understand the concern that I discussed with Mr. Connor about how do we make sure that these standards are maintained. So therefore, at the end, I've mimicked the language from 2739 about adequate space and training materials and as best that I could. But I also added E, just to be clear that you have to comply with your health and safety standards. So when it says you have to wash your hands, I don't know what you're washing your hands in unless you have some sort of sink. So those standards will then dictate what you should need. And so as long as we maintain our health and safety standards to the level that is acceptable, that should cover what your basic requirements are for your barbers.
Let me give the board some background on that. In the discussion, there was the legislature decided to remove specifications of how many sinks you had to have, or any sinks at all. And the concern that I expressed was through all that deep training, when we had the doctors come in and talk to us and all of that, we learned that having the hand sanitizer, you have fecal under your fingernails, it doesn't remove it. You have to have running water to do that. And so we have some health standards. And if you're supposed to be washing your implements, as we put in one time, you had to wash them after every person. How are you gonna do that if you don't require a sink? Because I don't care if it is one in the building down the block, people aren't going to do that. And so we found that we did have places in the health part that said you had to wash your hands. And so we wanted to comply with the wishes of the legislature, at the same time doing our duty to be sure that we're protecting the safety of Texas citizens. And so I really commend the group, because it took us some time to figure this out. But I've often said, I love the way TDLL operates, but I wouldn't last here 2 weeks because of the massive stuff that you all do. And this time, I really thank you for allowing me to see behind the curtain, to see how they do it. It was a great team effort. It took us a while to come up, but everybody was putting a little bit in the stew and going, well, how about if we do this, how about if we do that? And then we came up with this wonderful, wonderful solution. So I really commend everyone that was in the room on that, because I understand that about the facilities and you wanting to keep the cost down if somebody wants to go into it. And plumbing is the most expensive part of putting up a shop or a school. But that sanitizer does not do everything. And then we found that even at one point when we had some rule that you could use sanitizer instead of the water, when we went to the one sink every 3 people, we found that sometimes people didn't even have the sanitizer. So at least we found a way, and I really commend you on that. So I wanted the board to understand what was on the background, what was on the issue.
And I agree with that as well, because it developed, with just having hand sanitizer, there's no way you can rinse or clean your tools, your implements, before they go into your barbicide, which is supposed to remain contaminant free. So that's definitely a plus.
Any other comments?
So the next section was 82.29. This was more of just a clarification of what the current rule is. There is some confusion in the past of what was actually a duty, and this is a clarification for industry to understand that, for enforcement to work in this area, it's not a huge thing. It makes sure mandatory duties that accompany changes for change of ownership, and then it expands the list to another common entity, a limited liability partnership, company and limited partnership to include businesses. 82.40, the change to the Barber School tuition protection account. So we've had a couple cosmetology schools close a year ago now, and we've had to go into their protection account. And so I was going through the rules, and I noticed that the refund claim per student seemed low comparatively to what it might cost a student to go to school and how much they could be refunded. So I asked Brian to see if we could not up that amount, the possibility of at least helping some portion of payback for a student who pays money to go to school if they should qualify for that refund. So that's just basically helping the amount that we could possibly refund to a student if they qualify for a refund. So just giving them a little bit more help if possible. 82.50 and 82.52. So these changes in these two sections were made because of House Bill 2739, which removed risk-based inspections. Risk-based, we are going to inspect, and if there is an issue, we will always come back. Risk-based inspections was just something else that we could administratively catch somebody on, but we're always going to inspect, so there wasn't a need to be double punished for, doing the job and then trying to fix it and then coming out again. So we're gonna come out if there is a problem, we'll always have inspections, if there's an issue, we can follow up on that, but there wasn't a need to have an extra punishment to go
What
on.
was the risk inspection before?
I don't believe,
Madam Chair, that was one of the brilliant ideas of this guy sitting over here, and it turned out something we never used. We had the ability to go back and inspect more frequently anyway, and the risk-based part of it was being handled within the order that enforcement did. And so enforcement would say, you need to get X done, the compliance done, provide us information on that. So we never executed on it. And so this was just one of those things to streamline and clean up the process. We recommended this during the strategic planning process. This was one of our perspectives.
82.54, corrected modifications following inspection. So here, it's not different so much as that now you have extra time to notify us once you're done with the corrected modification. So before you only had 10 days to do the modification and to notify us. Now you have the full 10 days to do your modification if there is a need to correct anything, and then you have some extra time to just give us the info. And so it's not so immediate, you have the full time allotted to you to actually make those corrected modifications. It's just a change in.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Good.
Is that okay?
Yes.
8270, the one of Rockfield Ops people just noted that we had different language on the same time frame. So everywhere, for some reason, it would say within 30 days and then it would say something different, not later than 30 days. So we just wanted to make it all the same. So now it just says within 30 days. 82.71, again, this is the within 30 days change right there on E, just to match the time. Under U3, we just corrected a reference. I think in the past, some shuffling of the rules happened, and it was just incorrectly referencing a T, and I guess it was renumbered, so it's supposed to be an S reference. V was a change made because of SB 1503, which removed shampooing. So you are now allowed to employ somebody to shampoo, and they don't need that license because it doesn't exist. And those are the names of those changes. Moving on to 8272. Again, the change to C was specifically done because of removal of the number of chairs due to the statute.
And so when you say an appropriate number of chairs, that is just being defined by,
Number of students that you may have enrolled, because you have to remember we have the specialty school issue that is now if you have a smaller school, there's no, you'll need to have 10 if you only have 5 students. And that would just be something that we as a staff are internally going to work on procedures to make sure that we don't have students, even 12 students, or have an appropriate inadequate.
just from an old English major. My question was, when you say an appropriate number, that should be subjective. So my question is, have you all defined that somewhere? So are you saying a chair for each student in, I don't know, but an appropriate number, who decides what's appropriate?
Madam Chair, a couple of things to give background on. This is based off the faculty lawsuit for the special school, where it said you must have 10 chairs, and the court said that's inappropriate because we're the only have 4 students. This is consistent with how Texas Workforce Commission does it for its occupational program. So we don't have air conditioning schools or auctioneer schools that we regulate. We're regulated under TWC, and they have the same language about what's appropriate. And it's going to be dictated by the number of students that are present. There's language in the rules that hasn't changed that says X number of students, the 1 to 25 ratio is still going to be in place. You're going to have some students that are in the theory classroom and some on the lab floor. You may have 100 students, but only 20 of them are on the floor at one time. So it's going to be dictated by the flow of it, and it's not going to be a specific number because the legislature, this session told very clearly, you can't have a specific number.
I can understand that on the quantity when you're talking about, we used to have whatever it was, I think at one point it was 2,500 square feet, 20
Yes,
chairs or
ma'am.
whatever it was. I get that, right. I was just wondering, because if you were having, let's say you have your classes divided by first month and third month and ninth month or whatever, and you have 15 people who are in whatever month that should be having the chairs, then if you have more students than you have chairs, I'm just trying to figure out what appropriate means and how that inspector out there makes that call, because it seems such a subjective decision when you use the word appropriate.
And with this provision being less than 17 days old, we're going to figure it out. And we're going to be reasonable, we're going to be smart. But this is one of the things where, before when I said, do you have the throttle the size of shall remain?
Sure.
The law has told us what it is.
Yes.
And so we've got to work with the confines of that. We're gonna get with Tanya's crew and with Ray's group that'll do the school inspections and make sure that we get it right. And we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We're gonna go talk to Workforce Commission about their best practices. How have you guys implemented this over the last 25 years? And we'll learn from them. They're good and they're bad. And we'll get.
Well, you're good at setting up systems, so please keep us informed,
Yes, ma'am.
because if I can appreciate the removal of the numbers, it made it easier for a lot of people who want to come in and couldn't before, and I think that's always great. I just want to be sure that we don't leave a loophole that creates a problem, so that you walk into a place and the teacher says, well, I thought it was appropriate to have 12 working and 12 watching.
Yeah.
You know, and not getting a chance to have a chair, just so we keep that in mind. Any comments, questions? Okay.
Madam Chair, before we move on from there, when you look at the two bills that impacted schools, you have House Bill 2739, which was primarily focused on removing the square footage for specialty schools. And then you have Senate Bill 2065, which said all the schools and removing the square footage. And they both said it a little differently. And that's what Colleen was talking about earlier, is that the Ledge Council, which is the group that ultimately says this is how the new law language is going to read together, what's been removed and what's been added. They haven't put their stamp on it yet. But here's the one thing I do know, is that we're going to come back to you over the next couple of months. And the thought hit me as we were going through the rules. We wrestled. I mean, our staff, you know, with Evie and Marinella, they wrestle. They defend the industry, they defend the processes very vigorously. And I want that, and they know that. I'm very outspoken in the meetings and the things I want. But here's what I do know. The language in 2065 that says the commission may not establish building and facility standards that are not related to health and safety, including requirements that a facility has specific X. We're going to come back and explore that. We did not hit all of that in this version. And I think it gives us a great opportunity to talk about what the classroom of tomorrow looks like, not based on the rules of yesterday. And here's an example of what I mean by rules of yesterday. You know, a lot of people will hold on to tradition, and tradition's fine. But I let go of my fro about 15 years ago. Some things you gotta let go. But this language, you know, such as, you know, looking at that same section, that the school must have a chalkboard or a dry erase board. Well, what if they got a smart board? Now we tell them they gotta have a smart board, but you gotta still have a chalkboard and a erase board. There's new technology out there that doesn't change the tradition of the school, but on this list. And so the conversation that we're gonna have going forward is, what does the modern classroom look like versus the old rules? And really just going through, do we need to say you need to have X? Do we need to tell them you need to have an instructor's desk in the classroom? I don't know, but let's have that conversation about it. And so that's gonna come down the pipe. I think it's in the cosmetology rules. I didn't see it quickly here. But what's that?
The dictionary?
Yeah, the dictionary.
I think that's in.
It's in So cosmetology has a provision that says they gotta have a medical dictionary. Y'all know y'all Google everything. Y'all Google smart. Y'all make Einstein look like he's not as smart. You can Google it, and you got it. So why do we tell them they physically have to have a medical dictionary? So that conversation, I want to get everybody's mind right. The conversation about what does tomorrow's classroom look like, and no longer based on yesterday's rules. That's going to come down, and we'll probably have, you know, the work group working on it. We may have a summit just to get everyone's input on it. But be ready for that conversation, and be ready to fight for what needs to stay, but also to fight for what needs to come in new. That's going to be a real conversation, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and I'm going to love it. I'm going to love watching people break out in hives, trying to let go of something. So just be ready for that.
You know, I think that those are very good points, especially about telecommuting and having meetings. All of that is very good. My concern is that we don't lose sight of the realities. Because when we were having the meetings about the hepatitis and AIDS and all that stuff, the liquid stuff sounded wonderful. And I thought, oh, I never thought of that, that's a great idea. And then when the doctor said, let me help you with this.
Yes.
Because I was one of those ladies that always had it in my purse. Now when I go out there, I'm like, excuse me, I'll be right back. I need running water. So I just want us to keep in sight with what we really are about. The same thing about talking about the mannequin versus the models. There are some things that we can do, that we can automate. There are other times when you need to have the hands-on. It's sort of like going to your holiday meals and your nieces and nephews and godchildren are sitting next to each other, but they're texting instead of talking to each other. I finally figured out why. That's because they don't want the old heads to hear what they Okay.
Okay. So subsection L is removed. It's basically, because everybody's going to be able to champ the condition at this point, so there's the conditions no longer the same. Now use subsection N. It's Connor's favorite. So the change to N is, during our last strategic planning initiative before the legislative session, it was brought up that there is a prohibition of having a barber school in the same location as a cosmetology school. People brought up that this is inefficient and an increased cost for someone who owns both types of schools. But I also understand that there's a concern of mixing the two at the same time, and we don't want to have both running at the same time. So this language says that if you can't run any other business except for the retail of vending machines in the same spot as, in the same space as a barber school, but you can run a cosmetology school in that same space as long as they are not run at the same time. So if you did morning classes for one or afternoon classes for another, start switching days, you did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday classes, they would still need to be separate. We would still need to be separately licensed. We would still need to meet separate standards. But this is just an option for somebody who would, if they own both schools, instead of paying two separate rents, instead of two separate facilities, we can set up one, we're going to do both, and still be required to do that. And I know Connor.
I have strong feelings about it. This
Strong
is trying to get
feelings.
to. And one of the reasons that I do is that we have fought long and hard to have an independent industry. And slowly but surely we keep removing the barriers that made us distinct. And the last time was when we decided that without extensive education, cosmetologists could shave. That was the one difference that we held on to. And I know that there are people who feel that once we did the additional hours, it was no problem. But from the couple of schools that I have visited, I've found that there are former cosmetologists, or I guess they're still current cosmetologists, who found that the little minor hours that we were giving them to teach them shaving did not prepare them. And so they have made the choice to go back and pay full dollar to take the whole barbering education. My concern is we keep taking down the distinctions, one fence post at a time, and we say, well, we'll keep it protected, and that's not true. And so we have always known that the barber chair is very different from the cosmetologist's chair. It has to be able to lean back, it has to be able to do all these things. When you are erasing these things, you're hurting an industry, and I have a strong objection to that.
Right, and my offer to you though is that we won't require the barber school to have anything different on their license. If you're going to get a barber school license, you would still need to meet the requirements of a barber school license. So if that particular type of chair is required, you are going to need to have that chair. And I offer, and I know that you are a big proponent, and I told you this earlier, I think that having more opportunities to offer the barber school program, especially in a high school, concurrently with the cosmetology school program, I really think that that will help build the opportunities for students to at least have that opportunity and grow barbering as a profession, and allowing them to operate in the same facility, because right now they can't.
And I understand that, but I still think that the two need to be separate, and I will tell you why. The schools that, first of all, cosmetology, even in the schools, needs to be shifting. I met a young lady while I was at the DMV office who went to one of the schools in Austin that had a cosmetology program, and they closed it the year before she was eligible. You had to be junior, senior. When she became a junior, the program was closed down. Having a barber school within a high school has been something that has been a passion of mine. Before this body was even created, I was fighting for that, and it took us years to even get it considered. So I'm not against offering that opportunity, and anybody who knows me, and anybody who's been involved with TDLR would know that, because I've been fighting for it for a long time. But it was not to come at all cost. Sometimes you grasp the brass ring here and end up killing what you're after. This could be a magnet program. We have a school here in the city that's on the verge of being shut down because they have low attendance. We will charge these kids $2,500 if we catch them cutting without a license. Most of the barbers that I've met at the schools I've visited and the people who were coming through my shop who had been cutting each other's hair since junior high and cutting their own hair and doing their own beards since they were old enough to know what to do. How they do that, I have no idea. I can't even clip my ends. But it is a passion. It is a profession worthy of being treated as a profession. And so, to me, when you begin to do this, you are going to kill an industry. We've done enough. We keep removing things, and they keep saying, Ms. Connor, it's just this. It's just this. Then you find us now being everything that you all bring to us. We said, well, we changed it because we changed it over cosmetology. Well, it may not be that we need it on both places. If they are two distinct industries. And I feel that there are enough people who, by the proliferation of the private schools, tells you that there's an interest in it. So if we were able to do that at a school, for example, the cosmetology program is closed now. Why not use the same plumbing, the same situation to have a barber school? But at the time that this became an issue for me, there were more men in it than women. Now there are women barbers prolifically too. But why not give those young men an opportunity for something where they can become an independent contractor, work for themselves in an air-conditioned building, and have their own dignity? I understand what you are saying, but my problem with it is, right now the schools that have cosmetology are running morning and afternoon programs. So their chairs are already full, their space is already full, and they have people on waiting lists. Why not create an environment where we can have a different location for the barbers? Because right now, if you've got teachers on staff who are licensed to teach cosmetology, and they're doing it from 8 to 12, and then the next crew comes in after lunch and goes to 3 o'clock or whatever time school gets out these days, then it's already full. I think that we are undermining ourselves when we do that. That's my opinion. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
Talking about in the high school setting?
Yes, we're talking about it in the high school settings. And I'm also saying this for the private sector as well. I just think that this has been a long, hard battle for the people who were in barbering to be recognized as a profession. That's why they fought to have the white smocks. They have had a long road to hoe. And to just arbitrarily dismiss that, to me, is not acceptable. So, that's
Ms.
my
Connor,
opinion.
I'll join in. I always love and appreciate your passion. I feel like you're looking in the crystal ball and you're reacting to what you think the future could be. I know there was a major concern 2 sessions ago when the law was changed and allowed cosmetologists to shave. And all the fights before that, oh my gosh, this is going to be the end of barbering. We have more barbers than we've ever had before. You've seen it with people who thought, oh, I want to shave, but they're realizing that to shave properly, you have to go to a barber school. You got to learn the angles, you got to learn the strokes. I love cosmetologists, but I'm not leaning back with a blade in my throat for somebody who said, I just want to do it on the whim. I get that. This provision that's in front of you does nothing to diminish the barber. That school is still going to be a barber school with a barber instructor, with a barber curriculum. They're not blending. The students are not sitting next, even though I think they could, but they're not sitting next to each other, a cosmetology student in one chair and a barber student next to you. They're not being blended. the space is being occupied at 2 different times. That's all it is. It's an infrastructure change, and I hear your passion on it, but it's not being blended. The requirements for a barber school will still remain in place.
Today.
Today. And I don't know what'll hold 5 years or 20 years from now. I get that part today. But that today could allow for 4, 5, 6, 7 high schools today. And those are 16 and 17-year-old, and I'll say young men that may be diverted to a career today that they weren't going to be diverted to before. And that's a great opportunity for them.
What I would say, and it will be the decision of the board, so whatever they do is fine. But I think you ought to look at this realistically. We tried to say when we went with the shading thing, this isn't going to work, and it didn't. Now, you passed it, but we told you it wasn't going to work.
No, I didn't pass it. It passed.
Okay, it passed. But the argument was.
Trust me, I'd had a bigger budget if I could just pass stuff over there.
Okay, but the point is that we tried to give that wisdom at that time. The second time that we came to a point like this was about the hair braiding. Again, we said this is going to be a problem, but we had this big person had their own agenda about wanting to make more money, and it came back and bit it. So my point is that why go down a bunny trail if we're saying it's not just emotional for me. What I'm saying, yes, I am very passionate about it because I believe in this. And I have seen for years the fight that these, at that time it was predominantly male, had to go through to get to this standard. And by chipping away, you say, okay, but it's not gonna happen overnight. You know, we could go historical on that kind of stuff. That always say, well, this is for your good, and wipe out whole neighborhoods. And so all I'm saying is that we knew, we were trying to make it clear that you needed the training to be able to do the shade. We have found that to be true. The people have spent money and then had to go back and spend real money to find that out. And so you can say, well, yes, well, we just let them learn at their own pace. All I'm saying to you is this is a slippery slope. And if the schools are already full morning and afternoon in cosmetology, they're still gonna have to do something different. If we're going to lose this, let's not hand it, you know?
I don't think it's a loss.
I know you don't. I know,
don't
and I
think-
believe you're very sincere. I know you don't.
I don't.
I
I
know.
personally don't think it's a loss.
I know.
But I'll tell you the one thing that's different today than was before is removing those barriers from square footage is going to allow barber schools to come up quicker. And I think that's a good thing.
And that's
And
a
we
very
know
good thing.
very clearly that when 4 years ago, when we worked to get the square footage lower against people's best judgment, people were screaming and ready to beat me up and all that good stuff, and I was ready. I'm from the country. I was ready. But we lowered those provisions from 2,800 square feet down to 2,000. And we went from 40 schools to 82 at its highest and now 78. It didn't harm the quality of the education by having more of those schools. So with the changes that have happened by removing the square footage, there's a new player.
We knew that. I was for that.
Yeah. And it can start. So I just put it out there to say, I recognize the benefit of this new opportunity, but it doesn't diminish that I think that this is a real opportunity too. But I'm gonna put it on your finger.
Okay, because, I will just a minute. I thought the square footage movement was good. I was not against that. Because we had the Alpine situation and communities that needed to have a break on that. And particularly when it was just protectionism from people who wanted to just stay in charge because they had made the investment, whatever. This is not like that. My concern is, what I'd rather see are the new programs we are creating in these school districts. And I've been watching this because some of our areas that are smaller are having struggles and combining schools and all that. We're looking for ways to be able to change some things. I have no problems with the barbering being in high school. I'm the one that put it on the table, was fighting it even before Sunset Commission. But it was not to be at the cost of the industry. I'm just asking that we be smart about it. Because if a school is already outfitted for cosmetology, then they already have as many chairs as 25 or 30 because they're trying to have a classroom full of people. I get that. Then where are you going to put these barber chairs? it's gonna have to be enough to make it worth bringing on an instructor who can teach it. So my issue is, if you wanna come into this, the same way they're building all these new high-tech rooms for the STEM program, and I'm all for that as well. But everybody is not going to college. Everybody is not geared toward that. So if they want it, and if we're successful, where's the young lady? I can't find her now. That's taking me to the Rio Grande Valley. There she is. You're short like me, I get it. There are other places that can be interested. And those schools that are now closing down their cosmetology program for whatever reasons, because they're making it a magnet program, so everybody that wants to do cosmetology has to be bussed across. Let's find those places and say, now that you clear that out, let us tap you into some people who will be coming here. Just like in Austin, they have the gourmet cooking school. They were stunned. It's mostly boys wanting to go. Blew me away. So I would at least say, give us opportunities to look to see what the possibilities are. I think it's a mistake. I think you will be sliding down the slippery slope. That's my opinion. Anybody else want to give a comment? Yes.
Brian, I just want some clarification on something. You stated that if you had a cosmetology side and a barber side, these students are not to be combined, right? They have their own sets. Well, what if a special speaker comes in? Is it okay for them to combine students at that time, or do they still need to keep them separated?
They would not.
I'm sorry.
I would just answer simply, they're separate.
Separate.
They're separate.
Okay.
You're not, the way that's it's currently written is that if you're running your cosmetology program.
They're running different hours.
Yeah, you don't have barber schools there. When you're running your barber schools, your classes and stuff, you don't have barber schools. You can't run them at the same time. It's just you're using the same facility. Okay. Well,
So 8 to 12 cars and then 1 to 2 barber.
If it's in the same physical space.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're using the same
Kind
physical
of like
space.
the college, you kind of rotate classes.
If it's in the same physical space. So imagine this has been a cosmetology school for 100 years, this space here. You would not be able to have students at the same time. Imagine that this is a cosmetology side, and it's something that was said there from Michelle. This is the cosmetology side, and that's the barber side. They could be running.
Then it's okay.
They're not in the same
Then it's
space.
okay.
But is it okay for them to combine, if they're running the same hours, combine them for a special speaker as well?
It would make sense.
It would absolutely make sense, but they're separate.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
It would absolutely perfectly make sense, but they're separate.
I'm still living in this school.
So, remind us again of the wording.
So the wording is that you can't have another business teaching or practicing barbering being operated on the premises of a barber school unless it is a cosmetology school. That they cannot run at the same time, and it would need to be a fully licensed cosmetology school. And then vice versa. There's no prohibition on the cosmetology side, so if a cosmetology school wanted to, I guess I'm thinking about it this way. If I wanted to open both, and I only wanted to run one space, I would have to outfit it to meet both. And then I would have to run my programs at different times. If I'm a cosmetology school, or if I have a cosmetology facility, and I want to run a barber program, I would have to go through that process and outfit my facility to do both and run my programs at those different times. It's an option, it's not mandatory, I guess is the thing. So you don't have to do it, but it would be the option. And it would, I believe, would open up the ability for high schools who have those cosmetology facilities that may or may not be denied, but then to, if they want to refit them to meet the barber school facilities and then run those classes as they need to, then they could, if they wanted to.
Yeah, there's no square footage requirement, which is, I think, a positive thing. Well, I think I've made my opinion very clear. I don't think that they should be operated on the same premises in the alternating thing that you're talking about. That is my opinion, is the board can give their expression.
Fifth grade.
I'm gonna let it go, so we can move on.
So
So,
let it go as in the work, the.
we have to give her a rendering on whether we
Yeah,
accept this
just I would
word.
publish
Oh,
it,
okay,
so,
okay,
and then that my other offer is that this is for public comment. So do you want this to go forward to see if the public has a comment on it? If they say that it is burdensome, it is not, if it's something that is a good thing or a bad thing, do you want it published at all? To see what the industry.
My opinion is, if you're asking the board for advice, which is what we exist for, I am saying to you that in my opinion, I don't think that it should go forward like this.
Yeah, and so so you would want this language removed? Okay. Any other questions?
Dillington? I'm good.
You're jumping on your
I'm
seat.
good with it.
You're good with it.
Well, I'll say this, is there gonna be they're gonna outline this as far as, or have they already outlined it as far as, let's say if a school was building one now, and,
This building on.
a school,
Yeah.
should I say, I'm sorry, Barber or Cos, and they wanted to do both programs in the school.
They would not be able to.
And you can have, I visited a school that has a cosmetology and a barber school in the same building, but they are separate, so.
This would just be allowing you to use the same space. Just
Two different
times.
licenses.
Two different licenses. And you would, your requirements for each school is different.
So if you have 25 seats for cosmetologists with the regular chairs that they use, and you're wanting to have a school in that same space, I don't know how many barbers you're expecting, but you have to have room for the barber chairs.
Somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in there. So we've got, 2 for letting it go, 1 for wanting it to stay the way it is.
I would say let it go.
Let it go.
So take it out.
So taking it out.
Yeah. Is that what you mean by saying,
Yeah.
let it go? Yeah, take it out.
And so my last kind of question, since we're not all in agreement, is this something that you would want to see what your industry has to say about it as well? As it goes, so publish it to get your public comment one way or the other?
You're trying to persuade me to let that do that. I'm giving you.
No, I'm just, because on the last one, I had my full board say,
Sure,
yes, do
sure.
this. I just want to make sure that I'm capturing what the entire industry is going to want as well. And you guys are my industry experts, but I also
Right.
want to present
And I understand that.
everything if I don't have my full agreement. That's
So
fine.
you've asked us our opinion on what to leave in and what to take out on every other thing, and we're telling you we want this out.
Out.
Okay, good, yes.
Okay.
Can there be a diagram or something drawn up so we can kind of see what it looks like? Because I think that with the verbiage, it's kind of unclear of what it actually, I understand what it is by reading it, but I don't know if it's, has this been done before, Mr. Executive Director, in another state? 'Cause I'm trying to give an example of where it's working. Because I don't know if we all see the clear picture. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure people see a clear picture of the image that they have in their mind.
Right, for sure.
It can't, it's the concern that people have, because the bottom line is, it's the physical space. We've used the high schools as examples, but it's private sector as well. But it's the plumbing that it takes to build a school.
Right.
And this allows for a cosmetology school to parlay the plumbing that they've had for the afternoon class for the barber. It allows a barber school to parlay the plumbing that it put in place and then have a cosmetology school in the afternoon. Never shall the two meet before then. So it's obviously the discomfort of those things taking place in the same building, but not at the same time, because there's no blurring of the lines. You don't need a diagram to show that they're separate, but equal.
We know how well that turned out.
It worked out all right, I'm the ED. Went through some stress.
Yes, it is.
And perhaps maybe something that we, as to take a deeper dive into other sections of our schools, maybe it's something our education can
Yeah, it's spelled out a little better.
So, what is it that you're going to do going forward?
I have my 3 removed and my 1 unsure. And so it will. So the last change in this section is the addition of X. House Bill 2738, we changed position of 3 to allow for equivalency and conversion of clock to credit. And so the work group is done together, 37.5 hours, clock hours is to 1 credit. That is the Texas Workforce Commission conversion as well, so we wanted to keep the standards pretty much as the industry is currently using it. And that is also something that our education group has informed me that if that conversion is used, your schools that use credit using that conversion still qualify for federal financial aid and everything. So that's why that number is settled. That's also an issue that we are going to, moving forward, look at, as well as when we look at the full curriculum issue and making sure that we make those conversions correctly as we look at that curriculum that this time, this is the conversion in the language. And then kind of explanation if you're going to change from clock to credit, that you have to let us know when you approve.
And so it'll all add up to the correct total.
Yes. So 40 credits, I believe is the two.
Any questions, anybody?
So responsibilities in mobile shops, we just wanted, the change here is to notify us if you make a change to your actual itinerary, so you can track it.
Where are you looking?
Oh, I'm sorry, 8278, there aren't any additional changes to that. So if you have to let us know where your mobile shop would be, but if you make any changes, we need to know. So we're just letting you know, you need to let us know if you make changes to your itinerary for your mobile shop. 8280, there isn't a student permit fee, so I just removed the fact that there's no student. And then because the risk-based inspections no longer exist, I just combined them into one, as opposed to having the occupation because it doesn't exist anymore. 82108 and the general requirements. I noticed that in the individual one, there was a you have to wash your hands, but in the overall arching general
And
requirements.
excuse me, where are you? Are you past 82102 or where are you?
I'm on 8212.
Okay, very good, yes.
Yeah. In the individual ones, it said you have to wash your hands for each particular one, but for some reason at the top of everybody's general requirements didn't say that. So I
think we're trying to find it, because you said 82108 or something, but it's 82.102.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I'm moving that washing hands and hand sanitizer language to the top of everybody's general requirements, and because it still exists in each individual line, but I also thought maybe we should have it in our full general requirements.
I'm curious, because I thought this says, all licenses shall clean their hands with soap and water or use a hand sanitizer prior to performing. I thought that we discovered some time ago that the our hand sanitizer was not quite adequate enough to get done what we needed to do. Is that not true?
I'm going from how the wording is used, so like in 82.109, current law for COVID and here's, therapy services, it says wash hands, soap and water, or use hand sanitizer. I was just pulling language from your individual sections. So that's how it's currently done.
But that was on,
Your rules, all those are.
the section that it was discussing was on doing wigs and what?
This is wigs and hairpieces.
Wigs and
It's the same
hairpieces.
language for
And then it's
all
also,
sections that we have.
yeah, every single individual license type has that language. I just put that. So for hair cutting standards, facial services, waxing services, they can start with barber technician service, barber and barber manicurist, something that can be soap and water or hand sanitizer prior to performing service. So I just shifted that to the front.
I didn't understand on the weekend. I thought that we had talked about that before. in terms of when you were doing things that were close to the face and all that, did it still say hand sanitizer? We had a major discussion about that after either the last session or the session before that. Not this recently, but
82.103, which is your hair cutting, styling, treatment, and shaving services. Barber shall wash their hands with soap and water or use liquid hand sanitizer prior to using and performing any services on contact. That's your current sanitizer.
I'm surprised, because we had a major discussion about that. That's unfortunate.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, we still have an opportunity to come back and revisit that, bring the experts. And again, I think it goes with having the conversation, what's the science say today about sanitation? And so that's something we can definitely look at.
Yeah, because my concern is after learning, as I said previously, that the hand sanitizer does not do what you think it does. My concern would be that we need to be sure we're doing this in a way that are protecting the Texas citizens.
And that might be something that we need to look at the pool section, because I was just.
This wasn't.
All the way throughout.
Yeah, it's in each one of them.
This is not a slight at you, because you and I are very detail oriented, and I understand that even moving a comma makes us feel like we failed. You did not fail. I'm just saying that I thought we had this discussion after we realized the difference. Because like I said, I really thought it did everything. But if you are getting ready to, you just dealt with somebody where you popped a zit or did whatever you did, I'd like to know that you did something more with your hands than rub some alcohol. Yeah. So could you make a note for that? We look at that wherever we need to look at it.
Yeah, we're gonna probably take a full look at all curriculum issues, the education issues, and then the health and safety issues, because we wanna make sure that we are incorporating, like Marty said, the actual rules for the classroom and the safety standards and stuff that we need to continue operating. So G and 82.102, just from your clarification for issues that they've seen in field offices, the container has to be large enough to actually immerse all your tools, and I just wanted to make that clear. I'm sorry, 82.102, so the first part is the hand washing and soap.
G is the.
And then G is just the container, so it's large enough that you can actually immerse all of your implements. And not mixing it out too much. Okay. And then, 82.108, it's just a typo. It used to say made on a form prescribed by, and it should be prescribed by, so we just fixed the typo. Actually, our rules coordinator taught that, and she was, that was her change, and I was very glad for it, so yes, we fixed it.
Okay.
And that's the end of.
Very good. Well, I thank you for all of your hard work, and I thank you guys for your input on this as well. So you will make the changes that we have suggested and then post it so everybody can have,
Just before, let me make my notes before we're done.
yes.
No, I just want clarification on this. So as far as the large containers that can immerse your tools in, you're no longer stating that they have to have a barbicide jar at each chair, as long as they have a
Something large.
container. So not either or, because some shops have both. So just want to make sure that either or is fine, not they don't have to have both.
Right.
Okay, Lisa.
Madam Chair? Did I miss the overall vote?
On.
Because we're gonna need a vote to recommend.
No, I'm not there.
You're not there yet? I'll
Sorry,
sit back.
I'm
Sit
making
back.
notes.
Okay,
Sorry.
good. Let's sit back.
We wanted to make our notes. We're detail oriented. She's not.
She's pretty.
So the rules, I'll need a vote to send them to publish them for public comment. As you see them here, with the change that on 82.21, we're going to keep it as they shall provide a model. Okay, so we're going to keep that. Everything else will go as is, and then we will remove the addition of the language to new subsection N under 82.72 for barber schools about the cosmetology schools. You're okay with that? Mr. Jennison,
What?
You're shaking your head at me.
Oh, you said you got three?
I know, but
You're missing one more person.
Okay, so I will do this removal and then I will make that change back. So this would be for public comment and we'll see them again with the comment. So you want to take your vote?
So, you heard the ones that she has listed and the instructions that we have given her. So, if there are any questions or comments, now is the time. Otherwise, we're ready to vote to give her, the go-ahead to put this out for public comment. All in favor, say aye.
Did we get a motion?
Oh, do you want me to make the actual sections?
No, I just didn't hear.
The two changes, the 80, so I said we're going to
There were
do.
three things she listed.
The rule change will be published as is with the change to 8221 that's going to require the model. And then we're going to remove the subsection N of 8272 for schools allowing cosmetology schools and barber schools in the same spot.
Right, and then there was a third thing you just talked about.
So those are my only two flags.
Okay.
So 82.21 and 82.72.
Okay.
It just does, Brad Bowman, General Counsel, just follow up on Brian's comment there. I think we just need a motion from a
Yeah.
member of the board, second, and then.
I'm almost there.
I thought I was giving that.
Yeah.
So, I need to restate it all?
No,
No, just
just-
somebody
somebody.
says, yeah, somebody make a motion.
I thought I was doing that, but anyway. Am I allowed to make one, or we need somebody else to make it? It doesn't matter to me.
You are allowed to make
Okay.
one. You just need to make sure we get a clear, distinct second. You were going right into all of those in favor. As
Well,
opposed
but I
to-
stated what I was putting in before I said all those in favor.
Yes.
That was leading into
But you missed the
my-
second part. You missed the second one.
Somebody
We have a
needs to
motion on the
second your
floor.
motion.
Is there a second?
Oh.
All those in favor?
Okay, all right. What I said before. Is there a second? Thank you. The second was what was missing, I get it. Okay. So, you've heard the two changes that we have required or requested to go out to the public for public comment. Is there a second to that motion that we received according to what she's just read? Thank you, I appreciate that very much. Now, are there any questions or comments? All right, then we shall take our vote. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. All opposed? Or you are abstaining? No comment, okay. So we've got three and abstention.
Is that enough? Is that enough? Is that enough?
Did you go present but not voting, or did you go no?
President, we're not voting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 3 of my 4. Okay, I'm good?
Yeah. But thank you for all of your hard work. Okay.
Colleen, good job, and to the team that worked on this.
Outstanding.
Folks in education, good job.
Okay, so now we are, and we actually got through that, and that was good. In about an hour and 15 minutes, I was worried we were gonna go over our time. Our meeting is supposed to end at 12, so that's only 45 minutes, and we're down to the end. So if we're going to have work groups, now, did we cover everything you need, or do we still need to do a meeting with our work groups?
Madam Chair, we're fine, but we definitely want to start the process of the work groups, looking at the modern classroom versus old rules.
Okay.
And so we'll have the staff reach out to you and make that contact if you're working on
Good, and so we'll still work within the list we had before?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. So you all will send us emails or call or whatever and let us know what it is that, when we need to meet.
that. Absolutely.
So we're finishing, with a detailed legislative agenda, we're finishing 45 minutes early?
Well, we still have.
Did we get
agenda item
brownie
for-
points?
I think we still have agenda item H.
Well, that's what I'm discussing now, about the work groups. I'm asking that. I'm looking at H, possible appointments of work groups.
Chair Connor, this is Colleen Tran, Assistant General Counsel. While we're you're doing work groups, I noticed you have an administrative rule and a curriculum one. I know you had a special interest in the hand washing and sanitizer, perhaps an appointment of a sanitation work group to look at those sanitation rules.
That's a very good idea.
Would be an option.
Yeah. So, we just finished this. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I had a different agenda with you guys, sorry. So now
That
that
sounded
we
really
finished
bad.
G, so we're looking at. No, I'm okay. I just was confused for a minute. So, we're now on H, discussion of exam consistency.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, very good. That's gonna be an interesting discussion. Who's coming? Hello. Oh. You're popular today.
I think I dressed up.
There you go.
Well, good morning again. I'm Rebecca, I'm TBLR's Education and Examination. I just wanted to start, before we begin our discussion regarding exam consistencies, stating that prior to any exam administration and any exam review committee meeting, we have our subject matter experts sign a confidentiality agreement. So what you're going to see before you isn't anything that isn't public. This is what I'm going to bring up to you in just a moment, is public. However, the students, when they take their examination, there is a confidentiality agreement that they do state that they will not be discussing the contents of the examination, just, in general, with anybody. I just wanted to kind of make that, statement so that what we're allowed to speak about is what I'm going to be showing you here, and what Lynn will be speaking about also. It's public, it's in the candidate information bulletin. This practical examination goes line by line in that candidate information bulletin, and it's public. Anybody can pick it up. We have it on our website, PSI, even offers to send it to the students for free. This is something that everybody knows about. But as far as contents, specifics, we can't go into too much detail, but we will have, as much information for you as possible. And these rigor standards that are created by the subject matter experts. It's not created by TBLR alone, it's not created by PSI. It is subject matter experts that are selected by staff. When we put out the applications, we send out listservs, and we also post it on our website calling for subject matter experts in the industry. And then what we do is we tally up all of the applications. We have a matrix that we go through, and that's how we select our group. It usually consists of no more than 10 members, because we realize that if we get a group a little bigger than that, we don't get as much done as far as, being able to go over each item and reviewing the exam effectively. So what I'd like to share with you now is just a piece of the candidate information bulletin. And so what I have highlighted in blue is the reference to the hair shaping service. And I'm going to bring up Lynn Thomas, who is also a licensed barber, to come up and give you the technical aspects of how this is rated when the exam is taking place.
Did that used to be 45 minutes?
In the time that I've been with this group, it could have been prior.
Ms. Lynn Thomas with PSI, I'm the Cosmetology Client Service Manager. I am also licensed as a barber and as a cosmetologist and have been for about over 30 years. So I do understand the language, I do understand the compassion of being a barber. And we try to emulate that with our raters as well. The raters, as they've talked about, the subject matter experts, our raters are also chosen in the manner that they are licensed barbers. They can only score a barber exam, not score cosmetology exams, nor can a cosmetologist score a barber exam. It is a different exam. And so we believe in that distinction as well. That's my passion. What we wanted to discuss today is if you'll go to your second page, did you talk about these instructions? So if we go back to this blue highlight here, we're telling them that they have 30 minutes to complete the section, which involves removing a measurable amount of hair throughout the entire head by performing a tapered, blended haircut using clippers and shears. They're going to be informed when they have 18 minutes remaining, and once they've completed that section, we want them to step back and raise their hand to indicate that they're finished. So then as Rebecca was talking about the rater standards that your subject matter experts help develop, is that each of these task lines that are listed here, they have written what constitutes a yes and what constitutes a no. So as a rater, you don't have an option to give a no if the option is not there for you to choose, but that is what happened. So in some cases, you look at instructors. Instructors teach differently from school to school to school. So we have to keep that in mind when these rater standards are built, because we can't say that if it's a tapered haircut, if it gradually goes from short to long, that is a tapered haircut. So regardless of what road they take to get there, your instructor may teach you to go down this road, and this one may teach you to go down this road. But if it's tapered, we have to accept that as that it satisfies the task line. So we take them literally for what they say, and it is either a yes or it's a no. It's not like when I went to school and I received my license, it was all on a scaled thing. So it was, 1 to 5, how did you do? Now it's just very concrete, so it takes the interpretation away from the rater and gives it to the subject matter experts that say that this is the level that we want it to see. So it prevents that, well, I was taught this way, and this is the way it should be done. This person over here is wrong, the way they teach it, so my students are going to do this. And it's okay if your students do that, as long as it satisfies the task line. So if we're looking for an arch over the ears, as one of the task line states, that's what we're looking for. Not how they got there, but whether or not there's actually an arch. And that's what the subject matter experts said that they want us to look for. So that's what we look for. If the arch is there, and this person was safe while they were doing that, then we don't have a choice but to give that candidate a yes for that task line. So in some cases, you may see, as Mr. Lane, and thank you, Mr. Lane, for bringing these kind of things up, because we welcome this kind of a comment, because it gives us an opportunity to take a look and see what's going on at the sites. And I'm a firm believer in, I need to hear what's happening. If I don't know it's broke, I can't fix it. But I'm willing to go fix it if there's something wrong. So this gave us an opportunity to go look at video. We do have video now at all the sites, as well as audio. So in cases like Mr. Lane, if he could give us a call immediately, the day that the student comes back and says, this was different than what I expected, that gives us that opportunity to pull it immediately and address it immediately. And that is open for everybody. We are completely want to be transparent in what we do, and understand that you understand that we're in favor of the student and the candidate. We want them to get their license, but we have guidelines that we have to follow. So if Mr. Lane's student, for example, may I use you as an example? If he has a student that is doing a tapered haircut in a method that he has chosen to do, and then that student comes and they see another student doing a haircut, but boy, it don't look anything like what Mr. Lane taught us, that it looked right. That doesn't mean it's a wrong haircut. It means that we have to look at it to make sure that it satisfies this task line. And if it does, then we have to give it a yes. If it does not, then that's different. But that candidate's not going to know, nor is the student that's watching. They're not going to know whether that person got a no or a yes. If they didn't do a tapered haircut, that's not an automatic fail. Because there's so many other things that they can also get credit for. That may be, it may be a contributor to them not passing the exam, but it would not be an automatic fail. So everything is scored task line by task line, and it is on its own merit. It's not a whole picture. Does that make sense? So the standards that are written We require that our raters follow those standards to a T. So much so that if they are on video and that is not in their hand while they're scoring, it is grounds for termination. I'm a strict believer in following what the subject matter experts say. It's not their interpretation. It can't be. It can't be. It has to have a standard. And that's the only way that we're going to have a standard is those that are written. Inconsistencies, we went back, and when Mr. Lane brought up his concerns, we went back to April, May, and June to look at video and pull barber exams to take a look and see what was happening. We did not find anything that a rater was doing that was inconsistent with the administration of the exam. There were times, like, for instance, if you have somebody, we saw that they checked the mannequin at the beginning, and then there's some that checked it when they got inside the lab room. It doesn't mean that it affected the administration at all, but it was different. We're all about consistency too. So that's something we're about to go through a 4-day training at the end of this month, and we will be addressing that. That even though it didn't matter in the scoring part of it, what matters is what the perception of the candidate is. And anything that looks different than where they were before is going to create anxiety, is going to create a problem. So we'll address those types of things, but I'm confident in what we saw, that they are following the rater standards, they are doing the protocol as they're supposed to do so. Any questions for me?
Well, I really would say the board appreciates you coming forth and answering whatever the concerns were, explaining so that we can all understand. Because when you hear all these reports, it's confusing. It was very comforting to know that you have, number one, that you have a standard that you're requiring your people to go through. And the fact that you videotape and can look back and see what really happened means a lot. I think that one of the things we've learned over the years is when we have public comment, it's very frustrating for those who speak, who feel like they're not being heard, or that nothing is ever done about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you would come all the way back in to make this clear to us is very much appreciated. Any comments?
Can I ask just one question? Just one to Ms. Lee.
Maybe you all can talk after the meeting?
Okay.
Okay.
May I make one more comment?
Sure.
We would like to extend an invitation that if any board member would like to come and view an exam while it's going on, we would be more than happy to have you there. We'd like you to contact us though, so we can make sure, it would be very unfair to a candidate if we only had 2 candidates scheduled, and then we have 3 board members show up, and we have 3 raters that are there. So it would make an uncomfortable situation. But if you would let us know, we would be more than happy to have you there. Please expect to bring your ID and your identification of who you are, because that's part of our rules that we have to follow. But we would love your feedback on that. I have been, excuse me,
If you're wanting to do that.
I would say schedule it through Ms. Tamara, yeah.
yeah, that'd be fine. She can reach out to Daphne and we can make sure that you are able to get in there. I've been an examiner for probably 25 years now in testing, and one of the things that when I went to boards, I didn't like my lady with the clipboard. I didn't like her mannerisms. She was right on top of me. She was in my space. She was everything. And I went out of there thinking, I don't ever want to be that lady with the clipboard. And then I found myself in my career in this position, and then I'm thanking her because she taught me what not to do. And that's what I try to teach our raters, is what not to do. Don't be that way. Be fair to these candidates. Follow these guidelines that are set in front of them. It's very important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so our recommendations for our agenda items for next month. I assume then that we will be following up on where we are. Yes.
Did you do, so this Colleen Tran, Assistant General Counsel, did you do agenda item F, your work groups?
Oh, the discussion and possible recommendations, I was discussing that and then we moved on to something else.
Yeah.
Because we said we were going to talk about this when I was calling for it before. Ms. Tamla has the list of who we were before, and so that we can pull our meetings together as we need to, but it sounds like from what you and
I was just wondering, with your discussion of the hand sanitizer and wash, I didn't know if you wanted to do a new work group specifically about health and safety and sanitation.
Wasn't that one of them? She could tell us who our list was.
I only see two on yours, but I don't.
Because I think we do have them.
You do? Okay, I'm just making sure.
Ms. Conner, Mary Winston, we do have a health and safety work group, so that could cover that one. Did we need to have, do we have reports, work group reports from the administrative rules work group, which I think probably Colleen covered?
We covered.
Education and curriculum, which we've had the discussion, so it very well may be covered. We just want to make sure that we did actually discuss F. I think we covered both in G and H.
Right, I think that we did because they were already incorporated into that. But since this issue has come up about the hand sanitizer, I really would like you all to look into that. And if you need, we had major discussion about it before. If you need more information, email me or call me and I can tell you what I know. Ms. Tamla was present during that time and also was Bryant when we went through that. There was a different era then, but they actually brought in doctors for us to talk to and find out what the differences were between disinfecting and sanitizing and all of that. And that might be helpful because what we're not trying to be controlling, but as it was explained to us in our original orientation, our one and only job is to ensure the safety of Texas citizens. And figuring that out in line with what the statutes are, and the statutes are the laws that came out of the Capitol. Since we've moved our requirement from having one sink per every 2 barbers to being 3 sinks, and we'll have to look up what it is now. But we have to do this in a way that gives the barbers the tools they need and the guidance to be able to do what the ultimate goal is, and that is to protect the citizens.
And Ms. Conner, Mary Winston again, the board members of that work group are Mr. James Bowens and Michelle Locke.
Right, we know.
So good.
Yeah, we know. We have a list here.
This is Molly here, just one thing. Remember, y'all are a small group, so 3 makes a quorum, so just be very.
It's only 2 people on each
I
group.
swear, right, but in talking to each other or discussing it, just be careful with your conversations with your other board members about these issues, so.
Usually the work groups only work within their
Right.
group, and then they come to us and tell us
Right.
what's going on here at the meeting.
Just a
But
slight
just-
reminder.
Okay. Basically, she's trying to remind us that 3 of us cannot talk on a business matter that was brought before the group, but I think we got that. And so it seems to me that that may be the only issue that is pending that would require our work group would be the sanitation issue. We had an education meeting, committee. If there are any feelings about needing to meet on that, then I would suggest we do that. The administrative board did, the representatives for the committee on administration did meet. That was what she was delivering all day today. So, are there any other points or questions? Okay, all right. Okay, and you will coordinate getting together with? All right. So the education board will be meeting, and so will the sanitation and health, which is great. I think then that we have covered everything that we had intended. I was trying to see if we had anything still hanging. When we come back, we will get a feedback from the changes that you've posted, and we can go from there. That seems to be the only thing that is pending. And I really thank PSI for coming in and letting us know how we are handling the situation with the test. And my recommendation would be, if there are other things that people want to bring up in the next meeting, then let's be sure that we get in touch with the town so we can get it on the agenda and be able to discuss these things. And I'm really grateful, we all are, that the students came. Once again, would love to reiterate to you, it's nice that you come when it's part of the school, that's really great. But once you become licensed and you are making your career, we hold these meetings on Monday so that it is your off day. It was a lot of discussion over the years about moving this meeting, and we've always insisted that it be on Monday so that it would not interfere with your revenue producing. But this is where the decisions are made, and if you've been following the discussion, you understand that it can be the minute details that make the difference in how your profession is going to go, how it's going to go. And we can't have that without your input. So staying in touch would be great. Any closing remarks from anybody else? Okay. Anything else from the staff that we need to consider?
Madam Chair, do we identify a date for the next meeting yet?
No, she usually works that out with us, but how soon would you like us back?
I think Tim's telling me November 13th.
Oh, yeah, that's what we did put some, but I'm assuming she will send that because it seems to be very liquid sometimes, so we'll be looking at November 13th for the next one. We'll see. All right, if there's nothing else, let it duly be noted that we got through our legislative process, and it is according to that clock, only 11, not even 11:40 yet. So, without further ado, unless anyone has any objections, this meeting is adjourned.